Hello and welcome, listeners, to the Career Center Spotlight. I am your host, Douglas Phenix, the Career Center Coordinator here at Holy Names University. This podcast is all about bringing a spotlight to people who will share their personal journeys, insight, and career wealth and knowledge with you so you can get an understanding of the work they do and how they go about it. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and let's get it going. Hello, listeners. What's up, Hawks? Welcome to another episode of the Career Center Spotlight. I hope you're doing well. I have a very super awesome guest today, Casey LaBarbera. She's going to be sharing her journey of education and why she chose to go and get a master's degree. This episode of the podcast is about helping you discover that journey, if choosing a master's program is for you, and what does that look like. If you don't know Casey, you should definitely, if you don't know Casey, that would be very odd, but if you don't know her, you should definitely get to know her. She is the Assistant Dean for Student Affairs and the Director for New Student Programs Involvement and Leadership here on campus, working with leading the orientation program and everything, and so much other stuff that she does on campus. Super amazing person, super amazing energy. So Casey, I am glad to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
I am glad. You definitely have a very interesting journey, and I look forward to learning more about it myself today as well. And so just want to start off so people can get to know who you are, where do you call home as far as hometown and everything, and then your first inclinations of careers and everything as you were growing up.
Yeah, so I'm originally from San Diego, California. It's like interesting to think about that I haven't lived there since 2006. I've almost been up here in Northern California just as long as I've been in San Diego. Oh, wow. So this is kind of becoming home, but originally from down there. Growing up, I came from like kind of a stricter background, so I wasn't allowed to watch television as a child. There was like 5 things that I was allowed to watch, and I feel like that's kind of like, I sometimes tell people like that because I think it helps understand like why I am the way that I am a little bit. And so once we like were able to get television, I just kind of became like engulfed in that. And so I just love like this aspect of like being a part of someone's world for 30 minutes once a week, or just like watching these characters grow. So I went into college wanting to work in television, and obviously took a much different turn now that I'm in higher ed, but that was kind of like my first passion, was to learn about the television industry and to hopefully go into that.
What were you watching? What were the memorable shows that you were able to watch growing up?
There was like one black and white film called like Home for the Holidays or something like that took me far too long to realize was a holiday movie, because we watched it all year round. But as you know, like San Diego, we don't really have a winter, so anything it's kind of different down there. And then a lot of the Magic School Bus, my grandfather used to record it on VHS tapes. So like when you first could start recording things on VHS tapes and would send it to us. So a lot of those. And then like these really cheesy 90s, like basically like how to be a safe kid. Because back in the 90s, you know, we were always scared about kids going off and getting into trouble. So there's a lot of like how to behave as a child.
Okay, wow. So started off the journey wanting to go into film production and entertainment. So yeah, share that story with us, and how did that go and everything for you?
So I ended up going to college at Sonoma State University, which is about an hour north of Oakland, and just wanted to get like a different experience and move away from home, since I got the opportunity to do that. So I started as a business major because it was kind of, I was told like that was something you're not gonna be able to graduate with a business degree and not get a job. And I think that was really important for me going to college, was like, what is, you know, that next step to get a job. But I quickly did add a communications major, and kind of what led me into student affairs is the classes that I was really enjoying were talking about media ethics and talking about kind of like the hidden messages that are in a lot of the movies and television shows that we talk about and that we're watching. And it really centered around like identity, but also like aspects of like power and how, you know, we're showing different characters and different identities in different ways. And at the same time I was also an orientation leader. and a resident assistant. And so we had a lot of student leadership training around
Hmm.
identity, power, and privilege. And that just became more and more of an interest to me. And so that kind of switched my path from working in television to wanting to go into higher ed and like continue to have those conversations.
Oh, okay, cool. And so what got you into orientation team leading and all of that stuff when you were at Sonoma State?
I just remember going to my first orientation, and you know, I was like a really, I think it's hard for people to think that now because I know that I'm like very extroverted now, but as an 18-year-old, I was very quiet and introverted and scared and really scared about going to college and leaving home for the first time.
Hmm.
And going to, I had moved around a lot as a kid, so I was used to going to like a new school and not knowing anybody, but just going to like college was like such a bigger scale of that, right? Of like
Yeah.
moving into the residence halls. And so I just remember being at orientation and just being so nervous,
Hmm.
and having that orientation leader that like helped me feel more comfortable and felt me feel like it was going to be okay. So I just remember like sitting at orientation and being like, I want to do that next year.
Yeah.
And so at Sonoma State, kind of the process is you similar to Holy Names where you apply to all the positions at the same time.
Hmm.
So resident assistant and peer mentor and orientation leader. And so I applied and was able to get into the orientation program and to the resident assistant. So that kind of like led my path there. But I was still like so nervous. Like I just think back to like how nervous I was even in my like second year at college, like feeling like I didn't know what I was doing,
Yeah.
or like what college was and classes and all of that. So I think going into orientation really helped me understand like what it meant to be successful, like as far as going to class and study tips and time management, but then also like that's where I met my social groups. And something I sometimes tell college students is I didn't meet my close friends at college until really my senior year. You know, I
Hmm.
knew people, I lived in the res halls, you know, I had people to eat when I could or knew people, but the friends that I have now that are from college, I really met them my last year of college because you just get more and more involved and meet more people with those involvements. So that's why I really push like getting involved in clubs and getting involved in, you know, any kind of position on campus, because those are places where you can make deeper connections.
Yeah, no, those connections are huge. And just like yourself, when I tell people and people fall out of their chairs, figuratively, not literally sometimes, when I tell them I was a shy person in high school and even early in college and everything, I was similar to you. I went to college not knowing what it was and how to go about it. And in a sense, similar to you as well, like the way that you looked at the orientation team and that energy and how people were outgoing and helping people. You push yourself beyond your comfort level to reach for that, even though you may have been like, this is crazy, I don't know what I'm doing, but you still reach for it. And similar to myself, my first year in college, I took an acting class and communications class first semester, like just straight out, because I was like, I'm going to get out of this shell of being quiet and everything. And it takes time and all of that, but that's a huge lesson right there that you did, Casey, in the sense of pushing yourself past your comfort zone to say that's something that's really interesting. And I would, just don't know, like, didn't know maybe at that time, I don't know if you did or not, turn it into a career potentially, but just wanting to jump yourself out of your normal seat that you're in.
Yeah, it is shocking to me to think of you as like a quiet, introverted person. I would love to see that.
Yeah, it's a hilarious person. So you take your time and everything at Sonoma. You're learning. You're on the orientation team. How did your position there and everything grow? Like, what did you see one about yourself, and then what you also see about the position and everything that you ended up liking? And I know you talked about the class also really showed some interest in everything of what you wanted to do as far as helping in student affairs.
Yeah. That's I think it was something that like all came together. Um, so I think inside the classroom, meeting other students that were interested in similar things that I was doing. I think sometimes it's really easy to be in your small groups with like who's living in your residence hall or who's like in the commuter center all the time that you're seeing all the time.
Yeah.
But for me in the classroom, I started meeting people that were like in athletics, or were involved in like student events on campus. And so getting to know them and learn what that they were passionate about, and why, you know, we're doing similar things but for different reasons, and being able to like partner with them to put on some student events, but also like taking what we were learning in the classroom and being able to like have those conversations. And you know, like sometimes we would be like watching movies or watching commercials, and kind of breaking those apart. And so that was really interesting to be able to like have those conversations that were really important to me, but outside of the RA role and outside of the orientation role.
Yeah.
And I think a place where I really grew in orientation and RA is I was able to stay in those positions for 3 years. And so you grow to the point where like your first year, it's really about supporting new students and learning the position. And by your third year, it's really about understanding like the job backwards and forwards, and being able to like be that resource for other new orientation leaders or new RAs. And I really discovered like about myself that like being in a team is really important. I don't do well on my own. And I think that's like, that kept coming up, right? Is like learning from other people, like learning other perspectives from people I was in classrooms with, other people I was working, like getting, like, I think it's important to like Google things. And like, you know, I joke about like Wikipedia didn't used to be what Wikipedia is now, right? But like now it's like an actual resource to learn things. So I think it's important to do that learning on your own. But a lot of like who I am as far as like relational learning is like important to me to like get to learn from other people and their experiences. And so I think that has continued to come up from being in college and from working in those positions to now, is like really like listening to learn and like listening to understand and developing those relationships, and understanding that you can't do anything like on your own. It has to be about a team. Because one, you can't get everything done by yourself, but two, you're not going to be, an individual is never going to be able to do what a whole group can do and bringing in all those different ideas. And so that's something like that continued to push for me, that I think I brought into grad school and have brought into like working here at HNU, is wanting to work in as many teams as possible. I don't know if that's answering your question or not though.
No, that's huge. One of the things I've learned recently is that any relationship, and everything's a relationship, and a lot of people don't look at it like this, but like the relationship you have with your car, the relationship you have with your clothes, with your health, with everything, teaches you more about yourself. The relationship you have as a student with your program, with the people around you, teaches you more about yourself. And so you learned, in the sense, I know I'm more effective on a team. And people can try to go and be that Batman kind of person and do everything on your own, but you end up defeated at the end of the day, and lonely, and not being as successful as you can. There's an old African proverb, I believe it says, if you want to go fast, go by yourself, but if you want to go further, if you want to go far, go with a team, basically.
That's good. That's really good.
So
I mean, write that down.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, perfect.
I got to make sure. I know it's on that premise. But it's huge. And so you learned these skills, you developed all of these, and you're starting to wake up and you're like, oh, this is Casey, and this is who, and everything of what I am and who I'm becoming, and all of that stuff. And so what was then your transition into saying, like, you're getting ready to wrap up your time at Sonoma State and everything. Now, what are you thinking about next steps? And are you solidified now, knowing that you want to do student affairs, or were there other things in your head you were potentially thinking about as far as your next steps after finishing at Sonoma State?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. So I think my junior year is when I started talking to like different supervisors and mentors who were kind of like, you know, you could do this, you know, you could like work in higher ed, because you don't really, it's like always surprises people that like would want to go into higher ed beforehand, because you haven't been, you know, you don't know what college is. And so around my junior year, I started like thinking about it. And then my senior year, I'm very impressed with people that are applying to grad school and like getting ready to graduate. That was not me. So I was just trying to like make sure that I was like still involved and still doing all of my jobs, and I was like graduating. And so I started talking to people my senior year about higher, like graduate programs and what those look like, because I think every graduate program looks very different. For going into student affairs, a lot of times there's a graduate assistantship that you get along with going to school. And so you're applying not only for just the schools, but also for those assistantships, as well as like there's programs like throughout the country. A lot of people go across the country. So my senior year was kind of like starting that process, but I knew I needed some time off between college to go into grad school. I wasn't ready to just kind of like jump into school. So
You took the dreaded year
I
off.
took the year
Here's
off. Yeah,
everybody.
I did. And I think like, I graduated in 2006, which I think the economy was similar to kind of how it is right now. Like
Hmm.
2005 was kind of when we like saw this dip. I know that was something that was really hard for people that graduated when I graduated was finding jobs. And so I know for college students now, that's something that you're going to have to think about, right? Is like, what is the job market when you're graduating?
Yeah.
And so I was not thinking about that at 22 years old. Let me say that right now.
Hmm.
But I took a year off, and I luckily was able to get a position at the school I was working at. I had been applying to a bunch of different places. I went to the career fair, like the one that you do, and I got some jobs from there. But then last minute, I kind of got this opportunity to work in the housing office on campus. So I did that, and I spent I spent the summer and the fall semester basically researching different graduate programs
Yeah.
because I knew I wanted to go out of state, and I wanted to go to a school that was even bigger than Sonoma State.
Okay.
And Sonoma didn't have like a huge athletic program like we have here at HNU. And so I wanted to go to a school that had like more school spirit and had a large athletic program. So like those were all things that I was kind of thinking about, was obviously like a grad program that was really strong in Student Affairs, but also like trying to think about getting a different experience. So I applied to way too many grad programs that I probably didn't need to. I think I applied to 9.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, in like Ohio, Illinois, Oregon, Washington, Connecticut, kind of all over the place. And then
You were ready to go.
I was ready. Yeah.
You got
I
that
asked,
taste leaving San Diego. It's like, oh, I'm up here. It's like now the
uh-huh,
whole world's open.
exactly. I was asking, like, and I was asking everybody that, was in higher ed and student affairs, like what they thought. And I got different answers. Like I got some people that said like going into very like heavy theoretical program is really important. And
Hmm.
then I had some people saying like, don't go into heavy theory program. It doesn't matter. Like just worry about the assistantship. So I think, I tell students now, like ask people, but just know you're going to get different answers, and you're going to get answers that like go against each other. So you have to figure out what's best for you. And so that's why I think I landed on like 5 programs that I was really interested in that both had like very heavy theory, like in classroom
Okay.
programs, but then had very strong assistantship programs as well. And as part of those programs, you have to actually like fly out to the school to do interviews. And so
Hmm.
that's why I think like working full time, at the time I was working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
And so that helped financially, being able to afford to like fly out to those places.
Hmm.
So that's something that you have to be thinking about too for yourself. But when I went and I interviewed at Miami of Ohio, like I just knew that that's where I wanted to go, to the point where I was like, if I don't get in, I'm gonna take like another year off. But it worked out that I did get in. But know that like it's important to apply to like as many schools as you can. Like obviously they cost money, and so you have to be
Yeah.
thinking about that. Or if you know that you want to be, like I've talked to students that like they need to stay in this area, they need to stay in California, then I'm like, then that's what you have. And then that you're going to be limited to those areas. But just thinking about what's best for you, and then kind of choosing your own path. But I was able to apply out of state and move out of state. And so that's an experience that I really enjoyed, but I know that experience is not for everybody.
Yeah. And so, can you touch on just for those who are listening and may not understand the assistantship programs and stuff, and what does that mean and what does it look like?
Yeah. So they all look a little bit differently, and we actually are lucky that we have some here at Holy Name. So an assistantship is basically a part-time job that you're getting that connects to a graduate program. So on our campus at HNU, we have different graduate assistants. So that there's students that are working 24 hours a week, and they're in between kind of like a student position and a full-time position. And especially here, what I kind of explained about Holy Names is different, where the graduate students that are working in the graduate assistantships are very much like professional staff. They're just doing it at half amount of time. And so you're able to work in an office and get professional experience, but you're able to do that in a shortened period so that you can also have time to go and take classes that should connect with what you're doing. So I know like you have Jefferson in career services doing a grad assistantship. And then we have 3 in my area doing clubs and orgs and campus activities and new student programs. We have graduate and resident hall directors here at HNU. And then we also have, a lot of graduate assistants in athletics and the Center for Social Justice and civic engagement. So it's a part, I look at it's kind of like a part-time job, but it's different because it's connected to like also going to school at that school. And I had 3 graduate assistantships in grad school, which I think is kind of weird. I changed graduate assistantships throughout my program. So that's also a possibility as well.
Okay. And so talk about, just let us, I think you gave it a good detail, but just if there's anything else missing or that you want to share in that gap year, because so many students are always afraid of that year. Like, oh, if I take a year off, like I'm not going to be productive and I may not go back to school. And I tell people, don't look at it as a year off. Look at it as a productive year to figure out your next step, like you were doing, researching your grad schools, working and everything. To do that, I think that's vital. Was there anything else that you were doing during that time that just helping you progress and develop and everything?
Yeah, I think I am honest about my bias. I actually think it's really important if you can take a year off, to take a year off, because when exactly what you're saying, you know, when you're just going through the motions, it's really hard to stop and take a break and like reflect. And so having that year off really helped me like understand who I was more, you know, and like what, you know, college goes by so fast, and like that year gave me an opportunity to like step back and be like, what just happened? You know, what did I just do? And helped me like really understand and affirm why I wanted to go into the career I did. And so I really felt like when I was in my graduate program, and again, I'm biased, but people that were in my grad program that had some time off were able to talk about the concepts in a different way because they had thought about it like in a different way, or they had, you know, they had worked full time, and so they can talk about it in that way. Whereas I felt like some of the students that went straight through, not that they weren't doing a great job, but there's a little bit more of like a catch up to like have that reflection. I think too, just like giving like my brain like a little bit of a break, to like really again like readjust like what was going on. And I think that like graduating is scary. Graduating from college and graduating from grad school, I think are the scariest times, because you've always had the set path, you've always had your plan, and now this is the first time that you're having to do something like a little bit more not on your own, but without like the same safety net, you know. And so I talk about to students where the first month after I graduated, I didn't accept any of the jobs that I'd been offered, so I didn't have a job. The housing that I had fell through, so I was actually living in a tent at the time. So I was like in this place, and there was like some family stuff happening, so I really did not want to move home. But I was in this place where it was kind of like I had no job, I had nowhere to live, and I was like, am I going to have to move back in with my parents? And then in a week's time, because of like the connections I had made at school, I had a friend who had an extra space, like an extra room, that I was able to move in with, and I was able to like get a job. And so I think learning that it's not easy, you know, like job searching and like applying for grad school is not easy. Things are not necessarily just like falling. It feels like it like, or at least it sounds like things just kind of fell into my lap, right? Like, but learning like things aren't going to fall into your lap. But if you like not work hard, but if you're like like being persistent, like it's going to happen. And so I think like that's a big thing that I took out of it. And so when I was graduating from grad school and having to do that, you know, once again, like not having a place to live and not having a job, but having that, like, I know that if I just keep pushing, it's going to happen. Like that was like knowing I was capable of doing that, I think really helped me. And for a lot of our students here, like, I think they already know that and they are amazing. I just was not there yet at 22. And so that was like a huge growing point for me.
Yeah, no. So being able to find that determination and everything in you to be able to do that. I say a lot of the stuff that we go through in life, we face it again, but we face it in some different way once we're further down the road. It's not completely new. It's just, in a sense, it's like you're playing a video game and it's like a tougher boss eventually. But, you know, in that time, you've grown past the first big boss that you faced off against, and now the next one.
Yeah.
So
writing these down, Doug. These are good.
Just, you know, they just come to me. So now talk about your transition now, and what did that look like for you? Because I know some students do want to leave California and maybe go to different states and all that stuff. What was that transition like for you now, knowing that you're about to go to Miami of Ohio? You went out there and did the interview and everything, and now you're accepted and now you're ready to go. Like, take me back to you preparing and everything to leave California and go over to the East Coast.
Yeah. So I think it was a lot of like saying goodbye, because at that point you don't, I didn't know when I was coming back. So it's saying goodbye to people in Sonoma and doing all that same stuff, like moving out of my apartment and packing everything up and figuring out what I could fit and what I couldn't. I went back home and had some time with my family, and me and my brother, everything that I could fit in my car, like that's what I was taking with me. So me and my brother drove across country for like a week, which was awesome, to see like the United States. And so I was able to have a car, and so I drove to Ohio. For me, my first grad assistantship was in housing, so I didn't have to worry about finding housing, but I have had experiences where I've had to, when I moved back from Chicago back to California, I didn't have housing as part of it. So I think for people that wouldn't have that already like set in place housing, it's connecting with people that are already working at your place in your program or wherever you're moving to, and they can help you find a place to live and all of that. And so anywhere you're moving, just making sure that you connect with somebody, and people are always willing to help. Like that's what I've learned, like when I've been on the other side and known that new people are coming to work at the school I'm working at, like helping them find housing, like going and FaceTiming with them to get apartments. I've done that. But I was able to kind of just make a plan of like, I'm not a planner as much. I'm a planner at work, but I'm not a planner in life. And so like my plan was literally, I have to be in Ohio on this date. I set up with my job, like that I would have a place to live and like what I needed to bring. So I was like, this date I have to be in Ohio. And I was like, it's going to take about this amount of time. I Google Mapped it, right? This is the amount of time it's going to take. And then I just got in my car and I just drove.
Wow.
And when Joey and my brother and I were tired of driving, we would find, a motel to stay at. We had a little book of all the Motel 6s and Motel 8s along the way that we stayed at. But I know that for some people that may not be the path that they want to do. And they might want to have a little bit more of like, this day we're going to stay here and this day we're going to stay there kind of situation. But I like to just kind of go with the flow a little bit, I guess. And so I just landed in Ohio and unpacked my apartment, and my brother flew home, and there I was.
Wow. In a week.
Yeah.
Wow, that's some real, and gas is a little bit more affordable at that time.
Exactly. I know. This is like 2011.
Well, plus,
so it's a different time in 2011.
Well, once you get out of California, gas is reasonable again.
Right.
So,
yeah. Everything is reasonable once you get out of. Well, I luckily had people that were like, gave me a lot of McDonald's gift cards. Going away presents. So then you had food for the road. Those delicious McDonald's breakfasts. You can't lose with those.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so, what do you think? What's something you learned about yourself doing that journey of just driving across the country to go to your next adventure of education?
I think just like being able to try and be ready for anything that's coming. You know what? I think knowing that you can have a plan and you can plan the best that you can, which again for me is not a lot of planning, but even when you plan, things are going to change. Like this is like a cheesy example, but I was driving through Colorado, and being from California, I'm not used to weather. And there was this huge rainstorm where you couldn't see where you were driving, and hydro, whatever it happens with your tires. Yeah. And like being able to like make a plan. Okay. Like we need to get off the road. Like let's find somewhere to stay. And this is like when iPhones were like still kind of new, right? Of like learning how to do that. So I think I learned a lot of how to adapt and how to take on like different challenges as they come up, even though it's not a big challenge, but just knowing that like you're going to be able to use the resources and like under like the skills that you've learned in college to get you to where you need to go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's huge. Wow. Just like me even mentally thinking about driving across the country is just not appeasing at all. Like I'm just like, nah, but it's also the determination of when you want to change your life and when you have a goal in mind of what you really want to do. It goes back to what you touched on earlier, that determination to get to where you want to go. And you may not know what the path is, but you know where you want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really putting your feet to the pavement and then going forward with it. So that's awesome. But yeah, cross country trip is just not in the books for me, like at all. So I give you all the kudos. You and Joey, shout out to Joey for accompanying you on that trip and everything.
I'll let them know.
So now you're in Ohio. Tell us about your time in the master's program there.
Yeah, I started out in housing and residential life, which was great. It's very structured, and you have like very much like these are the expectations of the job. This is what you're going to do. Supervising resident assistants, doing, different things to hold up policies, but make sure that students are safe. I was able to do academic advising there as well because that was in the residence halls. But I think I knew that I wasn't going to want to be in housing for the rest of my life. I knew that orientation and identity programming and campus activities and leadership was more what I was interested in. So yeah. At heart, I'm a shy person and I'm scared of meeting new people. So pushing myself to like go and learn about different offices. And I was able to do something called practicum. So practicum is basically a really nice way of saying like free work. And so you can get course credit for it, but a lot of times like it's just a way of saying I'm interested in this area. Can I do a practicum with you? So it's like an internship, an unpaid internship. And so I was able to work in the multicultural studies identity center, and I was able to work in orientation and campus activities. So I was doing a few different practicums during the 2 semesters. And I think that was a big thing for me because in between my first and second year, the campus activities and leadership office decided that they wanted to hire a graduate assistant from my year. And so since I'd already been working in that office, I was able to apply for that and change assistantships. And so I was able to kind of move into campus activities and leadership, which has really pushed my path now to my current position and my last position working in that area. And then working in the multicultural center, I was able to do like leadership programming in that space. But then I got this really cool opportunity to take students to Obama's second inauguration in DC. And so that's something like that's not the reason I was doing a practic. I'm not saying like,
that was a bonus. That was a bonus.
But there was experiences I was able to gain from working in different offices, and I was able to meet different people from working in different offices and making connections. And so I think that's just like really important. I talk to people even if you're working full time in higher ed, but you know that there's like a different area that you're interested in, like talk to them about work, doing a quote unquote practicum or internship, reach out to that office. No one is ever going to be like, no, we don't want free help, right? Like, no one's going to ever say that. So that was just something that was a little bit different for my experience was working in a couple of different offices and able to get that experience. I was also able to do a summer internship in Boston because I thought that I wanted to move to Boston after Ohio. And I'm not trying to say anything negative about Boston, but I learned it was not the place for me. And so like that was helpful, but I was able to meet 2 other grad assistants, one that was in Illinois and one that was in South Carolina. And I still know them. And one of them actually, Bob, works at USF now. So Student Affairs is very small. Any job that you're in, you'll learn is very small. So I think just even when you're in like grad school, like make sure you're still like, as people call it, like grinding, like making sure that you're, having as many experiences as you possibly can to make those connections and to get that job experience, because you always have to be thinking like two or 3 steps ahead. What is your next? I'm not a where do I want to be in 10 years kind of person, but I'm a where do I want to be in 3 to 5 years. And so be thinking about like what's the next step for you and making sure that you're setting yourself up to get those experiences.
Yeah, no, that's vital. Like you did a lot of networking and connections during your time. Was the program a 2-year or 3-year program?
It was a 2-year program.
Okay. And then so during your time there, you're across the country and everything. What was your connection for like folks back home, family wise, friends wise? How did you navigate all of that? Was the homesickness there? And how did you navigate all of that stuff to keep yourself motivated and to complete your program?
Yeah, I think I was like California homesickness a lot. I mean, I think because I had been away from my family for 4 years, it had made it a little bit easier. But I think the
Okay.
idea of not being able, here I'm able, if I needed to go home, jump on a flight or get in my car and drive home and I can get there.
Yeah.
Being in Ohio, you just, the cost of a flight is a lot higher and it's a longer flight. So I think knowing that I was like that far separated from my family and just missing, Ohio is a very different place
Yeah.
than California, which I loved because I learned a lot. But even though Ohio technically isn't landlocked, it feels very landlocked, right? So you can't just like drive anywhere you want to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just being like really honest with the people that were in my program, and luckily we were all, I don't think there was very many people from Ohio. We were all from different places,
Oh, wow.
from all over the country. And so I think having that like shared experience of like, we all miss home,
Mm-hmm.
and we would do things like, what is something that like feels like home, and then we would do that together, or we would travel around Ohio together to like see new things, or like traveling, like Chicago wasn't that far, so like doing those things together. So I think like just being like very honest and vulnerable with the people that are around you that are having that shared experience, to kind of to lean on them, but also they can lean on you.
Yeah.
And so grad school's tough. Like I cried a lot in grad school. It was like academically like really hard, much
Mm-hmm.
different than college. So I think having people that were in the program that are experiencing the same things and like doing study nights together and writing papers together and having people to like talk about like these new concepts with, that was like the biggest thing. And then holidays are always hard. So luckily at the time I had friends from high school that were living in Washington, D.C. and in New York, which is it feels like a lot farther away than Ohio, but it was pretty close. So holidays, I would go to New York and spend it with them. But I think just also knowing that it was only 2 years, and you can do anything for 2 years. And then eventually I was able to come back to California if that's what I wanted.
Oh, okay. No, and that's vital. I always tell students who are looking at grad programs or just entering them, build that community with those folks in your class, because that's what's going to help get you through. Because most of the people, your friends or family, probably didn't walk this path, so they don't really understand what you're going through and the concepts that you're developing and all of that stuff. And now it's not to shun them, but it's so you can help understand this new way of thinking, of education, of life and everything, that's really going to help get you through. Likewise, I remember in my grad program really clinging to those people, and still friends that I have now to this day. I don't know if I cried, but I know there was very moments of anger and everything in my program where I was just like, I'm ready to tear something up. But the people in my program can understand that. Like I can go
Right.
to them and share that stuff. And like you said, be vulnerable. And that's such a huge thing in life in general, but especially in grad programs, to really put yourself in the work that you're doing.
Yeah. I think that's great. Yeah, exactly. Like making sure that you have that, like you're building that, if you're a community person, or even if you're not a community person, like but everything's relationship, like making sure that you're creating that.
Yeah, no, it's super vital. So you complete your time there and everything. Now you got Master Casey. What was your journey now, and you're thinking of completing your master program? What did you, now you knew, was it solidified that you wanted to get into orientation and everything from there? And then what did that look like for you as far as doing your 3 to 5 year plan to figure out what you wanted to do next, and then your journey back here to California and eventually to Holy Names?
Yeah. Well, I knew at the time what was really important to me. I really wanted to move to Chicago. And
Okay.
so at any university, there's like one orientation person or one campus events person, but there's usually multiple people in housing and residential life. And that's like a really good entry level position.
Yeah.
So my plan was like, I knew I wanted to be in Chicago. So to get into that realm and then do what I did in grad school, which is to reach out to other departments to start kind of doing that like internship work to get experience. So I I looked just in Ohio and applied to a bunch of different schools and was able to get a position there. And the nice thing about that was there was, again, for new people starting jobs as well. And so that's like an automatic cohort and community of people that are sharing that experience. So I worked a year in Chicago, but it was confirmed that not that there's, I still work in housing and residential life right now, right? I'm never going to get out of it, but it just, I knew that wasn't like specifically the place that I wanted to work with, but it allowed me to work with peer mentors and do some peer mentor programming. And a year after I worked in Chicago, this position came about in campus activities. And so I applied for it and was able to get it. And so that got me to move back to California a little bit sooner than I was planning to, but it got me the type of job I wanted to be in and back in the area that I wanted to be in eventually. And so I took that opportunity. And so I worked in campus events at Sonoma State for 4 years. And during my time there, I worked with student government. I worked in housing and residential life again, because again, I can't get out of housing. I'm always going to get pulled in. But I worked really closely with our orientation office to do different programs with orientation. And so while I was at Sonoma and I was kind of I'd been there for 4 years and was ready to take the next step, I saw this position at Holy Names that had clubs and orgs and orientation and campus events and student government. And so it was all these things that I was doing at Sonoma State and all of the things I really wanted to do in higher ed mixed into one position. And also gave me the opportunity to supervise like professional staff. And so this was the dream. And it was in Oakland, which is, I was spending all my weekends in Oakland anyway, so it was perfect. So I applied here and I've been here for 2 years.
Wow, it's just been 2 years?
I know. It feels like I've been here longer.
Yes,
I would, ways.
And in a good way, I would say.
Okay, good. I was like, oh.
It feels like you've been here longer than 2 years. I was like, just 2 years?
Yeah.
But that's how much of an impact you have had. So it's been great and it's been wonderful. And so a great little journey and navigation and everything that you've had and you've seen that development. And one of the things I also try to stress to students is you may have that goal again. Like if we take your example, like, you're going to Miami of Ohio. That's where you're going to go. That's where you're going to go to school. But your journey is taking you a ways way to get there. Wherever you're trying to get to as far as your career, it may your starting position may not be the position that you start with, and so you have to navigate yourself to the position that you're trying to get to. Can you touch a little bit on that in just a sense of, like, you took the job at Chicago, and what was it about Chicago specifically that you were interested in as well?
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes into like prioritizing, and like, so I think there's like the goal and like whatever the thing that we want. And if that's not possible, right? If my goal was, I want to work in orientation at Chicago, but I knew that there might not be any jobs in orientation, then it's prioritizing, like, do I want to be in Chicago or do I want to be in orientation? So understanding that you might have to be flexible in different areas, but no, like exactly what you're saying, like there's you're playing the long game, not the short game. And so at the time I had just spent some time in Chicago from Ohio, and I love Chicago. It's my besides maybe Oakland, it's like a 50-50. I don't know what my favorite city is. I've been lucky because I've lived.
I'm gonna have to go to Chicago because
I keep hearing about Chicago. I love Chicago. Like, it just has, Chicago like very much feels like kind of like that Oakland feel of the Midwest. It's also the hub for the Midwest. If you think about it, in California, we have a lot of big cities, but, and then you have the East Coast where you have like New York, but in the Midwest, there's not as many big cities. There's Cincinnati and Ohio, but Cincinnati is not as big as like a big city out here. And so Chicago is like this hub for the entire center of the United States. And it's like this blue dot in a red state, which is like interesting, right? Because you're getting all these different perspectives, but it just has like, there's just so much going on as far as like entertainment and food and activities, especially in the summer. Like, no one does summer like Chicago does, because Chicago winters are rough. And you don't leave your house, and so you take advantage of the summer. So every day during the summer there's a different festival, from like a book festival to Lollapalooza to Taste of Chicago. You know, there's like the big ones you hear about, Taste of Chicago, Lollapalooza, but then there's like a book festival or a cultural festival. And so I think just wanting to be I never lived in a city like that.
Yeah, with that kind of energy.
And yeah, exactly. And like, I knew people that were going to be moving there, so I knew I'd have community there. And if you have the chance to go to Chicago and like eat your way through it, that's what I do any place that I go to. But yeah, I think just understanding like when I was 25 when I graduated from grad school, I had, you know, I'm going to be working for a long time. As much as I would love to retire in like 5 years, that's not going to happen. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to like live somewhere differently, and that job afforded me to be able to do that. But that was just my priority. Is like it was a bigger priority to me to live somewhere different than to necessarily do like the exact job I wanted to do. But I knew that the position that I was taking would still lead to a career that I wanted. But I think it's all about timing sometimes. Like that's a big deal. I like I said, I wasn't ready to leave Chicago, but that campus activities job came up, so I applied for it and I took it. And like 2 years later, I was at a conference and I was talking to somebody that had been in a position for 6 years and he was ready to leave it. And he kind of asked like, how did you kind of move into a different sector? Like, how did you move into like the area? And a lot of it is like timing, you know, and it's like, I don't know how to be honest with him. Like after being in one area for 6 years, it's going to be really hard for you to change, you know, because the people that are applying for those jobs already are going to have experience in that area. So I think it's just about like, sometimes it's just like the luck of things happening and like always keeping your eyes out and looking for the next step. But again, like your priorities might be to live in a certain space and be around family, and maybe you don't have the exact job that you were looking for, but the priority is that you're closer to family or you're in California. So I think it's just about what's important to you and making sure that you're always keeping that like the front focus of what you want to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. I have a lot of folks and different things that I'm involved in. It's always trying to remember your why. Why are you doing this? What are you doing this for and everything? And so it's very vital on that. And so as we get ready to close out, I wanted to give you that quote as I told you I would. So from earlier, so if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It's an African proverb.
Love that. Well, thank you, Doug. This was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Casey. So if anybody's listening to this and they're maybe an alumni of the campus and everything, and maybe they didn't get the opportunity to meet you, if they wanted to reach out and maybe ask for mentorship or ask for some advice, how could they connect with you?
Probably email is best. I'm always checking my email. With COVID right now, I'm not in my office as much to answer my phone. But my email is just my last name at hnu.edu. And so reach out to me. Can you spell that
for them?
Of course. Here we go. It's a lot of vowels. LABARBERA at hnu.edu. You can find me on the campus directory, or call the housing front desk that can direct you to me as well. But yeah, I'm always checking my emails and would love to connect in any way that I can.
And you're on LinkedIn, right? Are you on LinkedIn? Or?
I am on LinkedIn.
Okay. So
find me on LinkedIn.
Yep. That's another way you can connect with her. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was like, of course I should have mentioned that. Yeah.
It's all right. So, any last tidbits of advice you just want to leave for the folks listening?
I think just that everybody's path is different. Do what's best for you. Like stay true to like what you want to do. Ask for as much advice as you can. But at the end of the day, take your own advice and just see what happens.
All right. From San Diego to the Bay to Ohio to Chicago and back to the Bay. Casey, thank you so much. See, this is going to be odd. Well, not odd. No, it's just so interesting and so delightful to hear somebody else say that they were shy younger in their life and now they're more extroverted and stuff. And because I don't hear that story outside of like myself. I know there's other people out there, but I just haven't met them yet. But it's good to connect on that kindred spirit and everything. And just so appreciative of all the work that you do and all the great leadership that you have provided in your 2 years that really feel like 5 or 7. So just really appreciate you and all that you do, Casey.
Thanks, Doug. We'll start a support group. It'll be great.
There we go. All right. You take care.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
What another great episode. A lot of insight, a lot of great takeaways. But I want to hear from you. What did you take away from this? What resonated with you and, maybe tugged at your heart to call for a plan of action and something that you can apply in your life now or sometime in the near future? So make sure you go ahead and leave that comment. Let us know what's going down. What did you take away from this? Or if you just want to give us a shout out and be like, hey, you're doing a great job. Love to hear all of that feedback. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. Also subscribe and hit that notification button so you can get updates about all the new great episodes. So this has been another episode of the Career Center Spotlight with Douglas Phenix. Until next time, keep soaring, y'all.